this opening will change your chess forever. So this is the only one you need to know to play against anything. My opponent plays here the London system. So many people have asked me, like, what do you do against the London system? I do the same thing here. I play d6, I play knight f6, knight to d7, and I try to play e5. If, however, e5 is not possible, that would be typically a case when they play the move knight f3, then we don't have enough defenders for the move e5, so we cannot develop our bishop this way. I switch to the king's Indian defense. But I still keep my focus on the move e5. Let me show you how exactly that happens. I play against a very strong 2200 rated Indian player here, and let's see what he plays. The London, of course, the opening that so many people are playing, but I'm immediately here going for e5. I want to fight for the center, and I want to keep it consistent. In the Philidor defense, the opening that I play, I have an entire playlist about it so that you know how to handle all possible variations. We always want to play the move e5. Even though this is something different, I still want to play the same move e5, and this bishop hopefully will be useful along the long diagonal. I might even develop my second bishop to this long diagonal, and yeah, also seems to be very active there. You see that my opponent is already struggling a bit because he doesn't know how to react. There is no way to stop the move e5, and it also comes with the tempo, which is a very nice bonus to that. He takes, which I don't really like, because this d4 pawn was more active than the d6 pawn. Anyway, every time they take, this is good news for us, because yeah, now it's much simpler. Of course, we need to be prepared against those attacking ideas from the opponent, because once the knight comes to c4, we don't have enough defenders. So we have a few ways to deal with it. We can play the move c6, which is very, very typical, and after knight c4, just play queen c7. But the only thing I don't really like that it allows knight d6. It's not like a big problem. We can still play something like rook e7. We still protect that one enough. If he takes, we take back with the rook, and thanks to the fact that the position is pretty closed, two bishops are not that huge of an advantage. Alternatively, let's start with the move c6. Maybe after knight to c4, we can even play knight to e4, because that would protect... Ah, wait, there is a pin. Yeah, this pin is also something you should be careful about, not to lose your queen in the end. So if he plays knight to c4 and I play knight e4, he can take there, and sooner or later I have to take with the knight, and then this queen would be hanging. Okay, he chooses another approach, bishop c4. I don't like this, to be honest. I think knight c4 was more promising because it was attacking the pawn, it was jumping to d6, but this move almost doesn't create any threats. Yes, maybe some pressure on that f7 pawn if the knight will come to g5, but even there I can just defend it. I don't really get it. And I can just play b5. b5 is a typical idea in this whole positions. So the main point of this video is that it's not even a specific opening, it's rather an opening system that you can use against everything. Like if they play the e4 on the first move, you play the move d6, and you play knight f6 and e5 and all of that stuff. I have a lot of videos about that. If they play d4, like in this game, you still play d6, and even if they play this annoying London system, you still can do the same thing. All right. How do we continue? I like the move knight to c5 at some point, but right now... Wait, I can't even play that, because after knight takes c5, I can play rook takes c5, bishop takes c5, and knight d3 check! Do you see that fork? I'm gonna win the piece back, and that would be fantastic. If he chooses to take with the bishop, then I still just play knight d3 immediately and win a piece. So knight c5 is possible. If he plays knight g5, I can either play the check, very, very annoying check for him, I think, because he cannot castle afterwards and then defend against this, or just capture this bishop and get a pair of bishops. I think I already am better in this position, even though it's not a blitz game, it's 15-minute game here, and my opponent is really advanced, 2200 rated player. It's definitely more than top 1% of all of the chess players. You see that he immediately gets into trouble. So this opening is really very promising for all of those who say no, it's so passive, it's just a bad opening, white just needs to play it the right way. You see that I play against really tough guys, the guys that you definitely want to beat, and I will be happy for you if you do that. And you can achieve all of that with this opening, and forget about all of that opening pain and headache. This is like the main point that I want to bring you. You don't want to suffer in the openings. You want to enjoy chess. You don't want to, if you're a normal human being, of course, if you want to become a world champion, then yeah, you need to memorize those opening lines 10 hours a day. But if you want just to enjoy chess and yet be successful with it, then this is the perfect opening system for you. You can play it against anything, against anyone. You can gather so much experience because every single time you play the same stuff, whereas your opponent sees it maybe once per 100 games, 1,000 games. And so, yeah, that's very convenient. Yet, of course, I haven't won the game yet. I have just got a very, very convenient position, but it's only the beginning of the game. Let's see how we can continue. I like the move. Ah, wait, my pawn is hanging. Never forget about your stuff, about this threat from the opponent. My pawn is hanging here. Maybe I can even relocate my knight to... I like this idea a lot. Although, yeah, that allows knight a4. And then this knight is coming to d6, not that great. Maybe I start with queen c7 in that case. Because, yes, it's like on the same diagonal with the bishop, which is not perfect, but I don't see any way he can use it. He can take, rook takes, second knight to f3, but I can always and always defend it, and I have a lot of defenders. So queen c7. I like this move because now bishop f5 and rook d8 becomes all possible. And because I have two bishops here, even though the position is not that opened yet, I think especially this bishop will make a huge difference. He has a lot of weaknesses on the light squares. I have exchanged the light squares bishop, and now I'm gonna try to take advantage of that. Of course, back here, instead of taking that bishop, I could also have played knight d3. That was a completely reasonable move, defending the pawn, attacking the pawn. The knight is a monster on d3. But I wanted to secure my positional advantage here, pair of bishops, and then go on from there. Alright, my opponent plays queen to c2, trying to continue the developments, which suggests after bishop f5 he wants to play e4, which, yeah, probably makes sense, just to not to allow that bishop to get to d3 where it's going to be too powerful. At the same time, that would open up this diagonal, which is also good for my second bishop. I do need to be careful with that e5 pawn, so I cannot play bishop e6, which would be desirable because this pawn would be in trouble. Maybe I play the move c5 for now, because maybe I even bring my bishop here. It's going to be such a powerful piece without any counter parts. So the bishop on b7 is absolutely incredible, and that c5 pawn helps, because one idea that my opponent had exactly was to play b4 and knight b3. And if you imagine that knight on c5, it's very annoying. You don't want to deal with that. So always think what kind of opportunities your opponent has. And wait, can I just even take it? My initial idea was to play c4 to grab even more space, but that is just an extra pawn, right? Because the pawn is pinned, queen is hanging, and otherwise, next move I'm gonna take it. Cannot create any dangerous counter threat. If he plays knight e4, I can still grab that. Yeah, I think he either sacrificed that pawn or blunder. Ah, okay, he even wrote me in the chat that he has blundered here. But that happens, like, it's already uncomfortable for my opponent, and that is 2200 rated player. Imagine how tough it would be for someone on your level to face you when you have so much experience, when you understand the position very well, you know where the pieces belong, and you can execute all of that so fast. Of course, in the beginning, you need to learn it, to get used to it, to understand the ideas, but once you do, and the more you play, the more videos like this you watch, the more prepared you are going to be, it's going to get only better and better and better. Okay, my opponent plays here knight to d4, trying to create a counter threat, which I like, but I think I can still take it. Although he's gonna take here and at least get active. Maybe I even play queen to b6. Like, what's the downside? He doesn't have any time to grab the pawn because I'm gonna attack. I think I can just play queen b6 because that would simultaneously protect the pawn and attack the knight. You always want to make so-called multi-purpose moves when in one move you combine as many ideas as possible, both attacking and defensive. So here I combine this idea of defending the pawn, of going away from this pin, which in turn creates a threat of grabbing that knight, and I still want to take that pawn on c3. You see how many ideas in just one single move. You always want to place your queen diagonally, one square from the knight. In this case, it's just not possible for the knight to attack you to create any problems. And so, yeah, already my opponent is in big troubles here. And I haven't even taken advantage of my bishop's pair, because this guy on g7 is not that great yet. But this one, I mean, the moment I am really waiting for the moment to put the bishop there, because it's going to be so strong. But first, I can just grab an extra pawn. Why not? You don't want to overcomplicate things. I analyze in my academy the games from the members, from the students, so often, and I notice time after time they make the same mistake. They overthink, they overcomplicate the problem. Sometimes you can just either grab a piece or a pawn and there is nothing afterwards your opponent can do. But I'm asking, like, why haven't you do that? That was so obvious, right? You have made, for example, in my case, this move myself, so it seems like you wanted to do that. But then when you could have continued the idea, you, for some reason, stopped it. And then the answer was, sometimes they just forget, in which case I always ask you to make your game consistent. If you make a move with a certain goal, please stick to it, if it's possible. Of course, if your opponent creates a very, very dangerous counterplay, counter threat, then you need to handle it. But otherwise, always try to be consistent with your play. And secondly, they don't make their moves which they wanted to make because they think that there are some problems with it. They think that there is something dangerous that the opponent can do. But when we go deeper into that, it turns out there was no threat and they weren't even calculating the variations properly. They just assumed or felt it would be dangerous. So please be more direct about it. Just calculate directly if it's really a problem or you just imagine it is. Don't be afraid of some problems that don't even exist. Okay, I think I want to play bishop b7. I want to calculate the active opportunities for my opponent. Bishop b5 seems to be the only capture. Checks are not possible. Remember, always use the checks, captures, and threats system. So takes, but then knight to d5. That is a double threat because I'm attacking the queen and the bishop, and I think, yeah, I'm just winning there. And otherwise, I'm not afraid of anything here. Everything is protected. My bishop is great. It's an opportunity for me to create additional threats. Like, I could have played, again, I could have played some moves like b4, right? But that would create some new squares for my opponent that I don't want to give him. And instead, I always want to develop my pieces. Remember, regardless of the opening you play, you always should focus on the 3 goals in the opening. Fight for the center. Center is the most important part of the board. Over here, the small center. Over here, the big center. Always want to bring your pawns there, bring your pieces, except for the bishops, because the bishop is a tricky piece. It can stay on the side, but be very active controlling those central squares. But the knights, the closer to the center they are, unless they can be attacked, of course, the better they get. So that was the first goal, to fight for the center, to develop every single one of your pieces. That is like the golden principle. That is why I preferred here the move bishop b7 over b4, because that is bringing a new piece into the game. And finally, third, make sure that your king is safe, just so that you don't need to worry about it. Okay, my opponent played queen to c5, which I kind of like on the one hand, because it seemed like I'm about to start creating those dangerous threats, so he wants to exchange the queens before that happens. But on the other hand, I think the endgame is great for me, because I have a pair of bishops and I'm a pawn up. let me illustrate you how you use that to your advantage. It's not enough to get a good position. The most complicated task that so many players, 99% of players, struggle with is to convert that advantage into a full point and actually win the game. So first of all, I need to answer the question whether I allow the queen's exchange or not. I think I have to, because if I go away, then this pawn is hanging, this knight is coming with the tempo. I don't think I need all of that. And then I need to think what is the best way for me to proceed with the exchange. I do like this move knight d7 and taking the queen with the knight, because that would relocate my knight, that would open up this bishop a little bit, and then if I followed up with e4, then this guy would be very, very strong, whereas the knight also has some prospects over here. And also it's forcing. I don't give that much choice to my opponent. He basically has to take because his queen is hanging. He's still thinking, so maybe he thinks it's not that great for him, but if he goes back, he loses so much time, and you never ever want to waste time in chess. Time is the most important resource, both in our life and in the chess game. And it, of course, I mean both the time on the clock. You don't want to waste any time unnecessarily, yet you do want to spend some time in the moments where it's really important. How do you understand, by the way? A lot of people have asked me, how do you understand how to manage your time? At which point you should spend more time? You should try to understand when the critical moment is, and then spend most of your time there. How you don't understand when the critical moment comes, where when the pawn structure is about to change, or when some exchanges are coming, you need to understand which pieces you want to be exchanged and which pieces you want to be left on the board. And also just when you feel that there are a lot of threats in there, when you need to decide which kind of a plan you think about seems to be promising for yourself, and which kind of a plan, what kind of ideas and threats your opponent has. Once you do understand that, then you can make moves faster, because you just need to adjust whether it makes sense, whether you can continue your plan, whether your opponent's idea is dangerous enough or not to take care of it. Okay, so knight c5 is coming here. I do think that I want to bring this bishop on d5. That is very, very active here. That is controlling all of the squares where this knight can go. Maybe the drawback is that he can play e4. But yeah, that also has some drawbacks. Maybe I can even play bishop c4 afterwards. Because, again, I have an extra pawn here, so exchanges are helping me. In the end of the day, I should try to create a passer here and use that to my advantage. In the endgame, you want to create passers, and if you do have passers, you try to push it forward if you can, because that would limit your opponent's potential and create a lot of threats, a lot of pressure on him. Yeah, he does play e4. I mean, the alternative is to play bishop e6, but I don't like it. It feels like a passive move, whereas bishop c4 is a very active one. Of course, bishop c6 was also fine. There was nothing significantly wrong with it, but I do like the fact that I'm very active here. Maybe he can push me back, but like these two bishops, maybe his bishop is a little bit more active because he's attacking and I'm defending, but as long as I play something like f6, I free my bishop, or I can play actually bishop f8 immediately and then activate my bishop, whereas for this bishop, I don't really see any prospects, only if you play the move f4, but that also has some drawbacks. After b3, maybe I can immediately play bishop f8. Although he takes, I take it, he takes. No, we are not gonna do anything fancy. We are gonna just play normally here. But then the question is, where does the knight go? Because back to b6, I don't like it. With the pawn on b3, the knight is not really happy camper there. Although after bishop f8, of course, the situation will improve for me. And maybe I will even play a5, a4 and create that passer in the right moment. Maybe what he's thinking about, what is a good thing for him? Wait, what? He just sacrifices the pawn. Okay, he's saying that he's gonna play rook b1 and take that. But I still like the fact that my knight is still on c4. It's very active. I mean, I think b3 is what he should have played. But after bishop f8, he probably wants to play knight d7, and that creates a lot of problems for me. That is very active. However, I can just play a5 here, right? Continuing my idea, because I think some problems, some difficulties might have been for me. He would have played rook a6 and somehow doubled the rooks there, and then my pawn is vulnerable. Doesn't seem to be nice, but now I can just play a5. Yes, he can still play b3. Then I play knight b6, he goes rook d6. Yeah, a little bit annoying. A little bit annoying. How do I deal with that? The alternative is basically knight b2, because in all of the other cases I don't want to allow him play that rook a6 move. Maybe something like rook c8 attacking the knight also makes sense. Knight d7, I can even play knight xb2 now, rook b1, rook c2, but again, that's getting too fancy. I might lose something there on a pin. Okay, so let's go to this variation one more time. a5, b3, knight b6, rook d6. How do I defend? Maybe just rook b8, because knight d7 is covered. I can take it with the knight. Yes, that seems to be working. Otherwise, remember what I have told you a minute ago, I want to create that passer. I want to limit my opponent's potential. I want to go forward with my pawns. Right now, I don't have a passer. A passer is a pawn which doesn't have anything stopping it to the promotion square. And right now, I have a potential passer here along the a file, but it's not a passer, strictly speaking. By the way, the move rook to d8 becomes possible. Earlier, it wasn't possible because the a7 pawn was hanging. Now it's not, so if he's not doing anything active, then I can play that. He plays something active, which he should. Knight b6 is my only option. And after rook d6 and rook b8, I actually create a threat of bishop d6. I mean, he can still protect, but at least it feels to be very interesting. Because even if I exchange this bishop for a knight and then play f6, this bishop is kind of useless, and I go on with my passer there. I have to admit, though, that the endgame my opponent plays pretty good so far. He is trying to be active regardless of the extra pawn. He's trying to create threats, and that is exactly the strategy you need to follow. You don't want just to wait there like a boxer like that and for your opponent to come and destroy you. Because believe me, sooner or later he's gonna come, and you don't want to stay passive. You make your opponent's task and life so much easier. You want the opposite. You want to make it as hard for him or her as possible. It does play the move rook to d6, which is attacking our knight. My plan was to play rook to b8, and I have both of my rooks here, the perfect positions in terms of attacking with this passer a4. Like if you imagine I play a4, a3, a2, then I need to jump away with my knight, and rook b1 would just win the game. So that would be perfect, but of course, in the meantime, my opponent will try to create threats. Although it's not that simple. Like, how do you even create a threat? Knight d3 maybe to attack that e5 pawn? To be honest, I might even ignore all of that. The alternative is to play f6, which also I don't really see any problem with, but I might even ignore it and play a4, a3, because it really is very dangerous there. And once I exchange that pawn, the knight again is free to jump. c4 might be a very promising square in the right moment, because it's gonna open up the rook as well. For example, this is a critical moment for my opponent and the right time for him to take his time. And that is exactly what he's doing. Why? Because if he is doing nothing, strategically he's completely lost. I'm gonna just push my pawn, as I mentioned, I'm gonna jump with the knight, I'm gonna destroy him. So right now, he has this opportunity, a few moves to create some pressure, to create some threats against me. And he absolutely has to use it. He's thinking about the best way, whether it's going to be knight d3, whether he can, I don't know, something weird like f4, but like, it makes sense to bring your bishop into the game, but at the same time, it brings my bishop into the game, and believe me, that's going to be a huge monster that is going to crush him. So he cannot do that. So I don't really see any more ideas except for knight d3, to be honest. Like, what kind of a threat you can create otherwise? Okay, he goes for rook d1. So obviously a4 is just screaming at me, like, play me, please just push this pawn all the way to a1. But remember, always and always, first you need to acknowledge your opponent's ideas and threats. So I have to think what he has in mind. What is his idea? I don't see it, to be honest, because rook d8 is not possible. What the rook is even doing on d1? What he wants to do here? There is no checkmating ideas. Bishop e5 is never possible. Rook b6 doesn't bring you anything. Okay, I have thought, honestly, I have done my homework. I have thought about my opponent's threats. I don't see anything. Again, you should not be afraid of something that does not exist. Of course, I might be wrong and I might blunder here or something, but I think there is no threat, and that means I should not waste any time unnecessarily, and I should be as fast as possible with my passer. Maybe now I do understand the problem. If I take, he prepared a tricky move rook b1. Like, it's counterintuitive because the rook just went to d1 and now it goes to b1. And then he's attacking my knight. If I go away, then he wants to take this guy and then this guy. And otherwise, if I play a3, he wants to take me, and I'm not in time to promote that pawn. After a2, he will play... wait, even that is winning. He plays knight b3. I hope you can follow my variation. The point is, in the end of the day, I promote, he gives the knight back, but I take it, and that's a checkmate because of this bishop. So stupid. So I think I can still go bdxa. And the second move after rook b1, I have knight c4. And then I attack this rook, and I have time for a3 afterwards. So I think in every case, that move, that variation works for me. Of course, a3 is the most straightforward one, so I'm going to start with it if he plays rook b1. You always and always want to start with the most active opportunities. Remember, checks, captures, and threats in this order. I still don't have any checks, but yeah, I think both of the moves are good. Knight c4 is also very good, because after the rook's trade, I have rook b1 checkmate threat, where he has to go there, and then I have a3. This pawn seems to be unstoppable. Or at least it's gonna completely finish his all source of counterplay. So this is the main task of this pawn. Not only like to promote and actually win the game, but also stop my opponent from creating counterplay. The moment your opponent switches from active defense to passive defense, you have your chances skyrocket to win the game, because now you are completely in the driver's seat, you are the one creating threats, and he has just to deal with it, which is always so much more difficult and also less dangerous for yourself. Okay, he wants to exchange. I think I have to take. Yeah, otherwise I just lose some material. But then there is nothing stopping my pawn. There is no counterplay, and I think he will need to switch back to the defensive setup with rook a1. But is he even in time? Maybe barely in time. He's gonna play rook a1, a2, and rook d to d1, the only way to even stop my pawn, because if he plays rook d2, I still play rook to b1 check and I win the game. But then the whole point of playing rook d1 was useless. I have no idea what he wanted to achieve with it. And that is also a good illustration. Like, don't try to make a seemingly useful active move, improving your piece, just for the whole purpose of developing or improving your piece. You are doing all of that for yourself. So again, your game should be consistent, and you should have a clear idea in mind of what you want to achieve, a clear goal. Don't make any moves that don't follow to one of the two things. In the best case scenario, even both of them. Either you make something very useful for yourself, trying to achieve your goal, or you do something very good to stop your opponent's idea, your opponent's plan. For example, this move f3, that is not helping him, it's not creating any threats, and it's not stopping my idea of just promoting the pawn. it's not achieving anything, so it just wastes time. And remember, time is the most important thing, and that is why I immediately win here the game. He must have played rook a1 immediately. Yes, you can say that it creates a loot for the king, but it's like not significant enough. I just win here because I immediately promote the pawn. So please don't waste your time. Make moves either to go on with your strategic idea, and if not, then make a move to stop your opponent's strategic idea if you really think that it's dangerous for you. Don't make any other moves in the middle game and in the end game. In the opening, yes, you just make moves to prepare for the battle, but once you are, then that's what you do. I hope this game was very useful for you, and in this playlist you see all of the games I have played in this specific opening so that you are completely ready for whatever can happen to you.